the fact that I wanted this to be a campaign about ideas, not about personalities, not about status quo. That was an issue that came up on Facebook today. I don't know if you caught that discussion. I posted on.
So
there's a lot of people that think that the status quo is just fine, and it's not, because if things are not working for you right now, that is the status quo. How's that working for you? So what we're looking for is ideas that are different than what we have. If we're just doing the same ideas over and over again, we're wasting our time. We're wasting our time. And it looks right now like that's exactly what we're doing. Some people told me, oh, you just don't know what our dreams are. Well, that's not my job. My job is to tell you what my dreams are, what my ideas for Hayward are, so that if you agree with them, we can do them. If you don't agree with them, then tell me what you do agree with. Tell me what you think is valuable. Tell me what you think would make Hayward a better place. Now, I think that actually having places in Hayward is really, really essential. We don't have that. We have it in the downtown area, actually, but we've done our best to destroy that. So we have to get rid of the loop. We have to reinstall the actual grid that makes downtown work. It was originally what they call a railroad town, with a town square and all that kind of stuff. So we're moving towards that now with the new library, with the open town square in it. But we still have to connect people to this whole thing. Most of our focus is on cars and how to get cars to move all over the place. We need to move people. Mobility is the word, not transportation. Transportation is how you move people. Mobility is getting people from where they are to where they want to be. That's simple. Accessibility means how many goods and services can I get and a reasonable distance from where I am. So that means mostly, I guess ideally, that you're walking distance from everything that you need to make your life worth living. You know, and that's to make you happy. Now, when you go down and you say like, yeah, that's a great idea, that's a nice idea, wouldn't that be wonderful? We always get down to the issue of how are you going to pay for that? Where's the money going to come for all these great ideas? And that's the main issue. The people in Hayward simply don't make enough money. We don't have enough money. Now, that was the issue that when the mayor interviewed me for the Economic Development Committee, she says, what do you think is the most important issue to be raised while you're on this committee? And I said, income. People don't make enough money in Hayward. And over half of us will never ever own a house because of our income. And I don't even think about it as a house. We'll never own a home. We'll never own a place of our own to live. We're always going to be renting. And that rent is constantly going up, keeping us out of that situation. What is the answer to that? Well, as prices go up, the only thing that's not going up is income. So we need to figure out how to raise a substantial number of people's income in Hayward. I'm not talking about bringing in people from San Francisco who already have that income. I'm talking about the people that live here now. How can we help them to raise their income? That should be the focus of City Hall, not just filling potholes. Yes, fill the potholes. Not just maintaining the streets and the lights and the sewer system and the water system. Yes, do all that. But that's just the maintenance of the city. That is the status quo. We actually need to focus on something a lot more essential. The life of the city, the essence of life in the city, enjoying life. And we're not enjoying life if 40% of our city is asphalt. We're not enjoying life if we're doing 2 and 3 jobs just to try to make ends meet. I interviewed so many people that they tell me, that I asked them, how do you make ends meet? And they said, oh, well, it's very simple. We put all our bills on the table and we pay the 1st, the 3rd, and the 5th bill this month, and the 2nd, 4th, and 6th bill next month. And I said, that's what you're doing? And they said, yeah. And both the husband and wife were working. The kids come home to an empty house. This is not the way to build a strong society. We need to break that mold. We need to get into a different focus, a different purpose. And our purpose needs to be community building. Community building means building neighborhoods. Neighborhoods means including everything that you need to actually live a high quality life. Right there, walking distance. If it's not a little bit farther than walking distance, then you take a scooter or a bike to get there. If it's farther than that, you start a new neighborhood. You start the next neighborhood and you build on that. But that's the way that you actually enhance Hayward so that it is not just a good place to live, but the best place to live in all of the Bay Area.
So what is an example that you can give us working on City Council where you can implement some of these ideas?
Okay, well, there's several committees that actually start to deal with this, and we might need a new committee. We might need a new focus. The Economic Development Department actually brings in jobs and helps businesses to actually expand. All right, I think it should be part of their assignment to also help raise the income of Hayward residents. You can do that by getting them jobs, so you match them to the businesses, and by also increasing our ability to make money for ourselves. You can use different things like the internet for that. I know some people think that's a harebrained scheme, but there's a lot of my friends that are making good money using the internet. If I can find those points that translate into massive use, not just one person being successful, but 1,000 people, 10,000 people being successful at the same thing, that's what I want the Economic Development Department to spread the word at, to get them involved with the residents as well as the businesses. And if we need a new department to do that, then let's get an Economic Development Department of Residents to actually do that, to focus the city on helping our residents. What we do right now is we say, we'll solve our poverty problem, we'll bring in people from San Francisco. We'll solve all those questions by bringing in people and businesses for somebody else, and they bring in their own employees. And maybe perhaps if there's a $700,000 house available, those employees will live here in Hayward. But for the most part, we're talking about people that don't live here, that only come here to work, and then they leave. And while I have nothing against them doing that, what I want is a lot more. I want a higher quality of living, and that's not a very high quality of life. When you spend most of your time commuting to and from work and then spending 8 or 10 hours on the job, that's a very low quality of life. If you actually have a job where it's walking distance from where you live, that's a much higher quality of life. When you get up in the morning and you want your morning cup of coffee and you say, I'm ready, and you walk downstairs and you get that cup of coffee from your local coffee bar, and there's all your friends and neighbors there saying, hey, good morning, how are you? And you actually share something with them, that defeats the whole problem that we have with urban development of alienation, of anger, of isolation. All these issues that we've built into our society in America, we can defeat by changing our focus back into community, back into neighborhood building, back into giving access to all the different goods and services that we need in our life.
Can you tell us more about how this would tie into issues regarding transportation in the city? We have a lot of traffic here. We also have the loop in downtown Hayward.
Yeah, I can tell you that. Let's start with transportation. It's really not a matter of transportation, it's a matter of mobility. Mobility means getting you from where you're at to where you want to be. It's that simple. So the first thing is, like I've been talking about accessibility, is walking. If you can walk to get the goods and services you need, then that's what we should be doing. How do you do that? Well, there's zoning restrictions that we have right now that are stopping us from proceeding like that. In fact, they're encouraging us to make more isolation, to keep things separate, so separate that we have to get in a car to get any of the goods and services we need, which makes more congestion, more pollution, and more anger on the roads. All right, so we do just the opposite, where we change our zoning laws and our zoning rules so we can break into these isolated communities, isolated housing tracts, and actually give them walking accessibility to the goods and services they need. You'll often notice that the strip mall has a great big wall behind it which says keep out, and you have housing on the other side of it. And you can't access that strip mall except by going in your car for a half a mile around, or a fire department, calling a fire department. Whatever's better. But there's our best, our bravest, racing on down the street. All right, so back to this. So if you can break through those neighborhoods with walkways into that strip mall, then at least you have that local accessibility to some of the goods and services you need. Now if you change that strip mall from an actual separate development separate from the community and make it part of the community. Say we build a mixed-use building that has stores on the bottom, it has offices on the second floor, and on the third and fourth floor, or if there is a fourth floor, you have housing. And the housing actually owns the building. So the rents from the ventures on the bottom floor are paying for the house, are starting to pay for the building itself. People are now economically involved. They're not renters, they're owners, they're participants in the economy. How do you get people to do that? Well, first you have to concentrate on raising their basic income, raising their foundational income. Right now there is no foundation to the incomes in Hayward, and the bottom falls out and you end up with people on the street, homeless. If we can change that whole aspect, change that factor by helping people, large amounts of people, not just one or two that will go to school and become entrepreneurs, have that entrepreneurial vein in them that they just can't stop themselves from starting a new business. If we can change that so that the masses, the large amount of Hayward residents, actually can use this methods to actually improve their incomes, that's what I'm wanting to focus on. That's what I want to push through Hayward City Council. That's what I want the city of Hayward to be the focus of. Not just a management company, not just a keep the sewers flowing, but actually growing the quality of life in Hayward. That's a different issue, and that's something we really don't focus on. We really don't do in Hayward.
So what about entrepreneurship? What would you like to do for Hayward regarding entrepreneurship?
That entrepreneurial spirit is essential to the life of any community. That's where your new ideas, where your disruption comes from, where people like that people have come up with new things like Apple, the iPhone and things like that. It didn't exist before. Somebody thought of it and somebody actually made it happen. All right, well we have those people in Hayward. We already have them in Hayward. What we need to do is enable them. Now there's some courses that are being taught at Chabot College, very good courses, but they're graduating maybe 20, 30 people through the 18-month program. That's not enough. There's 160,000 people in Hayward. So what about the rest of us? You know, if we're not going to go to Chabot, if we don't have the money, that we don't have the inclination, we don't have the confidence to go there and start our own business, what's up for us? Well, that's where we have to go even broader. So while the entrepreneurs, what we can do is we can facilitate them so that they can start their businesses, especially the ones that are going to go up from the bracket of just a single business to actually employing a large amount of people. What's a large amount of people? In this town, anything from 10 people up would be great. If you get enough people to employ 10 people, that could be a significant change in the way Hayward operates. But we want these to be good paying jobs. And the only way to do that is to actually train people specifically for a task at hand. We have to, so that means training people on site, training people to actually do what is needed, what the companies rely on and want. You know, one way of doing that, which is unconventional, I agree, but is something that is really functional, is the formation of co-ops. There's 10,000 people in co-ops actually in the East Bay right now. They are partners, they are partial owners of the businesses. There's a whole part of Spain that started a series of co-ops under Franco. So in the worst of circumstances, they actually started businesses, and they owned their businesses, they ran their businesses, and during the worst economics in the last 20 years, when the rest of Europe was falling apart, even Germany was impacted, Spain was up to 30% unemployment, nobody in the co-ops lost their job. Nobody in the co-ops was laid off. Nobody in the co-ops left their job. And all of them had enough income to survive through that era into the rest of society. Now, they are the strongest economic engine in all of Europe, the co-ops of Spain. And they make some really, we're not talking about making trinkets, we're not talking about making shoestrings or something that is not vital to society. They're involved in all aspects of everything in Europe, from high-tech to bread production, everything. So that's what we can do in Hayward. We can make this the focus of Hayward. Co-ops means that people have a stake in the business. They are stakeholders. We want more of the residents in Hayward to be stakeholders in the economy of Hayward. We don't want the economy to be strange to them. We don't want the economy to be their adversary, their opponent. We want them to be a viable part of the economy. Because, like I said before, the measure of a successful economy is not how many millionaires or billionaires you have walking around. In fact, that's one of the signs that you're in trouble. The measure of a successful economy is how many residents, locals, that you have successfully participating in the economy. Mind you, all of us participate in the economy. What we're talking about is successfully participating in the economy. That includes homeless people too. Homeless people are not participating successfully in our economy. So we help those who are most able to rejoin society as a functioning, contributing member of society. That means getting them a place to live. That means getting them the services that they need to straighten out their lives if that's what they require. And then we give them opportunities. Now, opportunities we give to everybody, but there's special opportunities for different groups of people until they move up the ladder in the economy and success. But all of this has one focus, a single focus, and that's the quality of life in Hayward. Hayward needs to be the place in the Bay Area where you live life full measure, that you actually seek something that, as to paraphrase Jefferson, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Well, Hayward is the place where you actually capture that happiness.
So related to that, what are your views on what Hayward is currently doing about homelessness? And after that, could you talk to us about rent control? What is your view on that?
Okay, there's some efforts in Hayward to deal with homelessness. There was just a package that was passed by the Hayward City Council for between $26 and $28 million. And it's going to go for some good purposes. I don't oppose those good purposes, but both those projects came before the Economic Development Committee. And I asked the critical question that nobody else was asking: how many people from Hayward, how many of our homeless would actually have access to these facilities? And there was silence across the room from us. And I said, what's the problem? And they said, well, in their experience, maybe 5 people from Hayward would be able to enter these facilities, and we're building facilities for in one facility for over 250 people, and in the other facility for over 400 people. So we're talking about 650 people, and 5 from Hayward will have access to them. There's 300 listed homeless people in Hayward. We do that by surveys every year. 300, and we're only going to take care of 5? This is a structural deficiency, as we call it in the urban planning language. What you might call it is just a downright failure. We need to address the issue of homelessness by getting people off the streets, by getting them into some form of shelter, by getting them the care and support that they need to move beyond homelessness and back into our society, those that can be moved back into our society as functional members. There's a lot of talk about that, but what does it actually take? It takes the political will to do that. That's all. That's all. Financing, we always finance the things that we want to happen. That's a fact. You've seen this over and over again. Oh, there's no money for this. Oh, there's no money for that. Well, why don't we build a library? Oh, we can find $65 million for that. It wouldn't take $65 million to take care of the 300 homeless people in Hayward for a lifetime. For a lifetime. And yet, we don't have the money to deal with homelessness. We don't have the political will to deal with homelessness. We need more people on the council that actually focus on that and actually will deal with the problem of homelessness. It's not rocket science. It really isn't. Where do you lay your head? What door do you close at night? Was that rocket science that got you there? No. No. And you might say, well, yeah, but it's hard work, and I made all the right decisions and I saved money to get where I want. That's good. That's good. And some people tried to do that and fell off the wagon. They made a few bad decisions. All of us are very close to homelessness, whether we admit it or not. If something happened in our life that caused us to not be able to work, most of us, our employers are not going to pay us if we don't show up for work. how much savings does any one of us have? How long can we stay out of work? How long can we not pay our bills before we actually find ourselves on the street? Honestly, it's not very long. It's just not very long. So the political will to do so is what we need to change and get out of homelessness. All right, and the second half of your question was?
Expensive housing and rent control.
Rent control.
Yeah.
So, yeah, rent control. First of all, the fantasy. The fantasy is that if you start rent control, which we already have, by the way, but if you start rent control, you'll stop developers from building houses, and they'll go away and they'll do something else. Well, that is a fantasy. I was in Santa Monica when the first rent control in California actually happened. It happened in Santa Monica and Berkeley, and neither of those communities experienced any reduction in housing starts. They were still going on. Why was that? Because rent control has nothing to do with developers' will. Developers build because there's a market for it. So if the economy is good, that's what controls how many houses are built, not rent control. What rent control does is it gives people access who don't otherwise have access. But we're still talking about the same issue, aren't we? Because what we're talking about with rent control is affordability. Can you afford to live where you're living? Can you afford to live in a decent place? Do you have to live in a slum? Do you have to live on the streets? Can you afford it? So what we need to basically address is affordability. There's two ways of looking at this. When I was working in Montebello, I built affordable housing, but I told the people that I was working with, both the city and with the contractor and developer, two different people, by the way, all three of them, I said, look, I'll take on this job and I'll manage this job if we build housing that's affordable for the developer to produce, for the buyer to purchase, and for the new resident to actually live in, to continually live in it. So a lot of people buy a house that's way over their head, and all they're doing is setting themselves up to lose it. What we need is to have them be able to get into that house and stay into that house, right? And maintain that house so it doesn't fall apart, so the structure isn't compromised, so that it doesn't become an instant slum, but actually becomes a wonderful place. There's ways of doing that we haven't talked about in the building department, in the planning department, in our zoning code, and what we require from a structure. Now, there are some places that have done this. Davis, California has done this, and they've done it quite successfully. But we need to move that. Davis is 80 miles from here. We need to do that so that's in Hayward. And we can do that. We can copy what they did. We can do, there's a lot more technologies that have come available since they started that 40 years ago that we can actually do today in Hayward. We look at it like we're just inventing the wheel again, and we don't need to invent the wheel. They already exist. Success is already out there. All we need to do is avail ourselves of it and use that opportunity. The essential element on all of this is how you're going to pay for it. I'm not talking about raising taxes. I'm talking about raising income. Is anybody else talking about that? I'm talking about finding ways to raise everybody's income, not just the chosen few, not just those who are going to be successful regardless of what you're going to do. Actually, I'm talking about those who will fail almost regardless of what you're going to do. So if you deal with that element of the community, that means that everybody above them, everybody to the left and right of them, has to go up too, because that's the essence of society. That's the essence of community, is that we do this together, that we grow together or we fail together. And if we look at it and answer that question, am I my brother's keeper? You know, there's a lot of religious people in this town. If we answer that question of, you're damn right I am, well then, show it. Show it. How are you going to show it? I'm not talking about putting more money in the collection box. I'm not talking about donating more to food shelters to feeding people that need it. That's all included, but those are stopgap measures. I'm talking about not making, doing things that will make those things not necessary.
So Didacus, on the issue of taxes, every year we seem to have a new tax in the city that the city always encourages people to vote for, including Measure T coming up on November's ballot.
Right.
What do you want to do to change, or what do you want to do about, or what's your view about taxes, and also what are you going to do about the city's budget?
There we go again. All right, so we're back into income, aren't we? That the taxes rise, the expenses rise, and our income doesn't. So yes, we need to address that on an income level, but we need to do things. Look, we're dealing with a structurally deficient mechanism in budgeting. Most of the budget increases this year were in benefits and salaries to the employees of City Hall. I have no objection to people getting paid what they're worth and getting the benefits that they need. We do have an issue, is that we're not a company. We can't raise the price of our goods and services in order to cover those costs, and that is quickly reaching its cross point where we will have greater expenses than income, and that's a loser for everybody, including the people that want more money. So what we need to do is probably we need to renegotiate that, and that'll be on a regional basis, but we can do that in Hayward too. The unions have already made tremendous sacrifices trying to help us. You know, they're paying for more of their health care, they're paying for more of their benefits than they were before, but still we're getting to that point where it's not feasible. So what we need to do with the budget is the focus of the city. We need to change the focus of the city. What we tend to do is we say we can't spend any more money, so let's cut city staff. And where do we cut it first? We cut it first on the least vocal and least able to defend themselves departments, like economic development. Now that's one of the silliest things that I've ever seen happen, but economic development last month had one person in it, and now they hired somebody else, so now it has 2 people in it. It actually, to be fully staffed, is supposed to have 4 people in it, and the department that I worked in, half the size of Hayward, had 6 people, 6 professionals working in it, and we did a great job. One person that we lost here in Hayward because he was scooped up by another city brought in over $100 million in new jobs, in new companies to Hayward. Well, it seems silly that you don't restaff that position immediately, because that's the lifeblood of the city. So if you're looking for more revenues, that's where you start. You staff those positions in City Hall that bring in more revenues. Economic development is a prime area where that happens. Where else does it happen? Well, let's look at the cost of development. So you bring in a new company and they're going to erect a new building for their business. And we put them through hell. It takes them a year to 3 years to actually get their process through City Hall with all the functions of City Hall. And now their price that they bid on, that they thought has gone up accordingly, sometimes as much as 16% in 3 or 4 months. So by the time a year or 3 years happens, it's completely unfeasible, and we have an empty lot instead of an actual business functioning. We need to staff the planning department so that projects can go through the planning department in a more reasonable time. We need to change the zoning laws, the zoning ordinances, so that they actually facilitate the function of our communities, our industrial area, our residential area, our commercial and retail areas, so that they're more blended. No, I'm not talking about putting poisonous actions next door to kindergartens. I'm talking about putting business parks walking distance from residents. How about that? We don't have that in Hayward, but we can have that. And I'm not talking about one business park that's accessible by some people. I'm talking about business parks all over Hayward, integrating that into the fabric of Hayward so that people can walk to their jobs. I'm talking about then neighborhoods that are not 40% asphalt and concrete, but actually are people-oriented instead of car-oriented, so that they can have the mixed use and also have that availability of walking to a job in a business park, in an industrial park. All right, so those are 2 of the functions and 2 of the ways that we can actually get more revenues in, because the more people who are working, the more businesses that are functioning, the more revenues the city actually has access to. Now, balancing that balancing that so that actually we grow, and by growing I mean we actually end up lowering the amount of debt that we have to the amount of services that we provide, is key. And that key is achieved by favoring those elements that actually provide income to the city, and by facilitating them. So we cut down the time it takes to develop a project, we cut down the restrictions that are unnecessary, and we cut down the focus from cars to actually living. So we have that essence of life, that high quality of life that we're all seeking. But that doesn't solve all your problems, does it? You're grinning, and I know that you're wanting to ask me something about that. So the taxes, that was an issue too. There's a Measure T that's on the ballot, and yes, I am voting yes for that. Why am I voting yes for that? Well, we're out of line with the rest of the Bay Area, and this would not even raise that near what the other cities in the Bay Area are charging. So we're not going to lose anything by that. It's a one-time tax, and there's a lot of exceptions. If you donate your property to a nonprofit, there's no tax. If you will your property to your children, there's no tax. There's a couple other issues too that happen that make that so that it doesn't, what it falls on are those people who are selling their homes to somebody else, to somebody who's not related to them, that's somebody who's outside of the community. So that's an essential part of things too, that we do things that make sense. Why do this now? Because the $16 million that is projected to bring will actually balance the budget for a couple of years. But ultimately, the problem is that the budget will not be balanceable, that the issues that are causing the budget to be out of balance, the way we finance our cities. I'm not putting this on the workers' backs, I'm putting it on that. The way we finance our cities is not workable, is not working for us. And we need to change that. How do we need to change that? There's a couple of different ways that we've tried before. Redevelopment actually was making life a lot better for us. When Jerry Brown ended it, I was not in favor of that. I like Jerry Brown, I know Jerry Brown, but no, I was not in favor of what he did in the redevelopment. He said that we no longer need it. I see all kinds of needs for it, all kinds. I'm a proponent of what we call village towns. And redevelopment can be a major, essential instrument in actually achieving that, of building our communities like I've been describing. We could use redevelopment on that. So we need to build a new redevelopment effort that will actually do that. Where should the money come from? The money should come from Hayward, from the state, and from the federal government. One way of doing it is to cancel one flat top, one aircraft carrier. You put billions of dollars into, since they cost about $200 billion, you'd put a lot of money into the economy that way. Okay, that's not going to happen, you say? Maybe not. So raise the income of people in Hayward. There's one way of doing it. Give us the control to do that. That's what we had under redevelopment. We said, this is what we need. Who will bid on this project to build it for us? How much will it cost? And the state and the local monies are what came together to achieve that. All right, we need a mechanism like that again to do the exact same thing, to match our needs with the ability to get it done.
Okay. Oh, this has been a good discussion. Is there anything else that you want to add that we haven't talked about, and then make a closing statement after that?
Sure. Look, you may have noticed that the climate is changing. A little issue. Actually, the tides, if you ever have walked on the edge of the bay there in Hayward, are rising. They're getting more vicious. It's not just hurricanes in Florida that we need to be worried about. Here it is in the protected harbor, the San Francisco Bay, where these waves are actually chewing at our shoreline. We project that if this continues, and it will, since we're not doing anything to stop it or to change it, it will continue. That within the next 20 years, there'll be the bay lapping up against 880. Yeah, against the freeway, and probably flooding it in parts, making it unusable. All right, what are we going to do to change that? Well, there's a lot of things that we can do. In fact, Hayward can be the leader in this. We can produce most of our own energy. We've taken efforts to do that, but there's so many things that are obvious that we could do, like all those industrial roofs in Hayward. If we covered them with solar panels, we could produce most of our electricity right here in Hayward. You say, like, yeah, that's good for the daytime, but what happens at the nighttime? The same thing as happens with an electric car. You put batteries out there and you charge the batteries to run things at night. So there's all kinds of reasonable ways that a reasonable person can think of to actually make things work 24/7. And we can do that in a way that doesn't pollute the atmosphere, so we don't put more carbon into the atmosphere. There's other things. There's things like green walls. Yeah, a green wall. It's a wall that you build outside your southern-facing wall in, say, industrial buildings, and it actually absorbs carbon. So it actually reduces the amount of carbon that is in the air. This has been used to great success in Germany, of all places, and in Holland. In Holland, there are several cities that are carbon negative. In Hayward, we're struggling to be carbon neutral. We need to be carbon negative. We actually need to take steps in both the way we build things, in the materials that we use to build things, and in the effect of our building to change from producing carbon to eliminating carbon. And one of the major ways that that we talked about is mobility. That if people can walk to where they need to go, then that's one way of ending the amount of carbon we're putting in the air. Beyond that, we go to electric scooters. Beyond that, we go to electric bicycles or just regular bicycles. All of that reduces the amount of carbon, reduces the amount of congestion, has all kinds of benefits for everybody in Hayward. So that's an essential thing that is not being addressed in this particular race. I don't know if it's being assumed or just being ignored, but that's a major thing that needs to be looked at face on. We cannot ignore that any longer. And the last thing is my closing remarks.
Oh, also mentioned that you were endorsed.
Yes, I've been endorsed by the Sierra Club and by the Hayward Mobile Home Owners Association. So I'm very proud of both of those. And I've been endorsed by the mayor of Mountain View, who is a friend and a mentor, and also has some great ideas about both the environment and the economy. So I'm very proud of all those endorsements. And as you can see, the Sierra Club, obviously, that's for my ideas on the environment that I've just been talking to you about. The Homeowners Association, the Mobile Home Homeowners Association, why I'm so proud of that is because unlike having politicians endorse you, that's just one person's opinion. This is 5,000 people's opinion. So they actually don't call it an endorsement, they call it a recommendation, their legal term for it. But I'm proud of that recommendation. 5,000 residents of Hayward that could very possibly be voting for me. I'm very, very proud and very happy to host that recommendation. So, where does that leave us? Well, that leaves us with a contest, a campaign that should not be about personalities. I eschew that whole idea, that whole mechanism that I see happening where people were yelling and calling people names. No, I've called no one any names, and no one has called me any names either. And I think that that's a major issue. Civility. I know all the other people that are running, and all of them are good people, essentially good people. So we need to talk about ideas. This needs to be a campaign, a debate, a contest of ideas. Who has the ideas that you, the residents of Hayward, want to see effected, want to see enacted for your quality of life? And I think that I bring a lot to the table that way. So that's why I'm actually running for the Hayward City Council.